again. See if I can share. There we go. All right. Everybody see my screen?
Yeah.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Photoshop?
No, white square.
Yeah, in Photoshop, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Photoshop's in the background.
Okay, cool. We're going to start on a blank document here. And today we're going to talk about clipping mask first, and then we're going to start into some simple selections. So just to get going, clipping mask is if you think of this white box or this white document as being the side of your house, and if I came in here with this and created a, come over here,
Hi.
fill this with black, and consider this a window into your house, okay? So if this is your house and this is a window, then I'm going to come up here and I'm going to grab this young lady and I'm going to move her over here. Let's see, where are we? I think this is, no, this is it, right here. And I'm going to bring her in here. Now I would normally make her a smart object, because anytime you found out last time when we talked about smart objects, if I resize her down small and then I just change my mind and want to bring her up to be large again, then I lose pixels when I do that. But in this case, I'm not going to worry about it because it's just for demonstration purposes. So I'm going to take her and I'm going to make her this size right here. Okay. So if you think about her as being outside your house, and you want her to go in your house and look out this window, then what you would do is you would create a clipping mask. And I've already made a mistake here. So you do this again. My apologies. I'm going to go back to this. It's supposed to have a new layer here. You have to have a new layer to work on. My cursor's in the wrong place. I'm starting out really good tonight. Right here, and there we go, new blank layer. So I'm going to fill this again with black. I got that on a separate layer down here, and if I turn this off, all you see is this black box and no pixels around, empty pixels all around it. Okay, it has to be that way in order for this to work. Now once more, I'm going to bring this young lady in here. Got all of these tools up here in my way. Let's see. Bring this down so I can see. You can't see these tools, but I have all these zoom tools up here in the way where it's hiding my tabs. So move her in here. And one more time. I'm going to resize her. Something like this. Okay. So again, if you think of this as being the side of your house, you turn the house back on. And this being a window and her outside your house. Now you want to move her inside your house, so you create a clipping mask. And if you right click on her picture and say create clipping mask, you notice that she becomes indented with the little arrow down here. I'm pointing over to my layers panel if you don't know where I am. In fact, they have some annotations here where I can create a spotlight. So I'm over here, right here where this lady is indented. This layer is indented, meaning it is clipped onto this layer right here. If you think of it as a paper clip, basically she is clipped to this right here. And being clipped to this right here means that she is only visible where there are visible pixels in the layer that she's clipped to. So as I said, this has no visible pixels all around here. The only visible pixels are in this black box. So if I turn her back on, she is there, but she's not visible because she's not within where this black box is. If I click on her and move her over here, now she becomes visible within that black box, okay? So basically, if you think of it that way, she's looking out the window. Over here, she's in the house, but she's not looking out the window. Here, she's looking out the window, and she can only see where there are visible pixels. If I turn the house back on, you can see that there's white here, and she's only seen within that window. Now, I hope that makes sense, because the rest of this, I'm just going to kind of turn it on and show you how you can build something like this. So we're going to erase these. And what I did was I added a little bit of an off blue color background, and I added a frame over here. I put a drop shadow on it, and we'll talk about I did that with the layer style. And that's what, if you look over here on the layers panel again, that's what this right here is, where it says effects and drop shadow. That's a layer style. And then I, let's see, what did I do here? Okay, turn that group on. Okay, so then I brought the young lady in and clipped her. I don't know what this group is. I'm going to delete that. I played around with this for quite a while. Clip that again. So now I have this young lady inside this box, and you can see I've got a nice little frame here with a little shadow around it. And if I come here and do that to all of these, I create another box over here on the right-hand side, and I bring this lady in, same lady, and clip her to this one. I have a different picture. So now I have a nice little frame with another drop shadow. And then I come down here and I created another frame down at the bottom, the nice little drop shadow, and I added this girl. So you can create some really cool images or collages or things like that by adding clipping masks and putting images inside frames like this. Now, there have been several parents that I've shot seniors for that I've sit right here beside me, and we've built announcements. And this is the way we do it with these announcements. They're 5x7 cards, and basically they tell me which images they won't wear. There's usually a scripture in the middle or off to the side somewhere, and they have different pictures of their senior in here, and they're built just like this with a little drop shadow and some little black boxes just like this. On the other side, the back side of it, there's usually more information about the announcing, the graduation announcement, where it's going to be and where the reception is going to be, and maybe another picture or two on that side. So it's really kind of cool for that kind of thing, for Christmas cards or whatever you want. Clipping masks are really cool for this sort of thing. So this is just one way that you can use these. I know I kind of clumsily went through that, but are there any questions from anybody about creating these or anything? No questions?
Can you use a textured background?
I can barely hear you, Phil, but I think you asked if you could do textures that way.
Yes.
Yes, you certainly can, and we're going to talk about that in just a second. In fact, we'll go to that one, which is, yes.
When you're doing that, is there a way of making, keeping those squares relative to each other? Like clipping them to a grid to where they'll be spaced perfectly to each other?
I don't know of any way to do that. The way I do that is with snap guides. Okay. So if you have snap turned on right here, snap to guides, then you have your guides in here, and it tells you exactly where the middle is, and it allows you to center these. And then you can also get the quarter here, and you can center this in the quarter and center this in the quarter, that sort of thing. That's the way I do it.
Okay, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Bob,
Yes,
where's that blue layer? The blue background, where's that layer? It's off the screen.
it's right here.
And okay, got you.
It's just a fill layer.
Mm-hmm.
And I did it as a fill layer rather than filling the background because it allows me to go back in and click and move it around. So I could double click on this and then I could just move it around to get different colors and try it different ways to get what I want. The other way, you just have to fill it with a color and you figure out what you get. So that's just why I did it that way.
Note to self.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions?
That's cool.
Okay, let's look at this one. This is one that I did just to show. I wanted to show, a lot of people like to show pictures through letters, and it's the same kind of thing. If we come back here, and let me just start from the beginning. I just had a background layer that I filled with black because I've got this gradient over here. I don't know if you can see my cursor. You let me know if you can't see my cursor. Just an off note, last time we did this, I was zooming with my computer because I don't know if PCs will do this, but Mac has a setup where you can press certain keys and it'll zoom to your cursor. But when I watched the replay of it, it wasn't zooming, so you weren't being able to see my zoom. So I need to figure out how to do that within the Zoom streaming product. But anyway, over here on where my cursor is, in the layers panel, I filled the background layer with black because I wanted to use a gradient to kind of give it a little bit of a different look. So when I created this and added this orange in here, I wanted it to have a little bit of a gradient from the center out. So that's why I put the black in the background layer. And basically I just came in here and I was looking for an orange. If I color, you can either pick from a uniform or pick from a school color. But when I pick from their school colors, they come back kind of off red. So it's kind of weird. But I wanted it to be a really orange because their colors are orange and white. I'm talking about Rockville High School, by the way. Then I came in here and I added my text. And I just added text. You can see that it's got a yellow color to it. So if I click on the text, double click on it here, the text will come up at the top up here. You can see the options bar where I have yellow as my color for text. And it can be anything because I'm going to replace that anyway. It just happened to be the color I was using. Then I came in here and I brought this picture in, and I'm going to come in here with just this picture, turn off the text. Oh, it's clipped to it. That's why I won't do that. So I'm going to have to unclip it so you can see that. This is a picture. I just did a blanket for the softball coach. I wanted to give her something because she's been, she was so good to us and giving us the account to do all of the softball girls. And sadly enough, their season was canceled. So I did something actually for her that has all of her seniors on it here. So all the seniors, you can't see them because I took them away. I just want to use this background. But I just did this recently, and I shot this picture back in March, February, whenever it was that we did their stuff. And I shot a picture at like 2:30 in the afternoon on a rainy day. And I adjusted it to make it look like nighttime. So I added this bat and this ball in here, and then later on I added the girls in here, the seniors, and I just ordered a blanket to go to the coach as an appreciation. But anyway, this is the background I decided to use for that. And if I take it, and like I had it before, if I just right click and say create clipping mask, it's going to clip to the letters, whatever is in below it. So below it is the text, and the text, if I turn this off and just show you the text is all that's on there on that layer. So there is no visible pixels anywhere except within the text. And by doing that, this picture of this background will only show up wherever there's text. So if I turn this back on, you can see that that background shows up only where there's text. So I turn this back on and turn this back on. It's not a great image, but it's just showing you kind of how it works. Within the text, I also added a stroke, because if I don't have that stroke in there, it's a little bit harder to read. So I just added that stroke, and all that is it's just a white. It's not really white. It's kind of an off orange white. It goes around so you can see it better. So it's an inside stroke to help with that. So again, just a different way that you can use clipping mask. I've seen a lot of this, you know, in ads and stuff like that. So any questions on this? Okay, no questions? Then we'll go on to the next thing. I have to remember what I was doing. Let's see. Oh, that's not it. I think this is it. Yes. So how does this work with landscapes? Well, let's just look at this. This is a picture I shot in Missouri. Some of you out there will remember this. This is top of the rock. It was like 50 degrees that day, and it felt like 30 degrees. But what I got this, it's fully edited and posted just like this. And I was looking at it and I'm thinking, well, this water, it would be nice if this water was a little bit more, a little darker, a little contrasty, maybe even saturation. So I'm just going to make a selection, and it's going to be a kind of a loose selection, but and I probably will go back in and edit because I'm doing a terrible job. So add this to the selection, and I'm going to take this rock here out. And I would, of course, do a lot better job if I were really doing this. Okay, that's just backwards. Okay, so something like that. So I'm gonna try to edit this water. So I'm gonna come in here now. I can't see. Whoops. To move this up again, I can't see my icons. I'm going to add a curves layer. And you can see in my layers over here, you can see where I have, by making my selection and before creating the curves layer, it automatically created a mask for that selection. So everything else, all of this area up here, all the, the water and the green and the rocks and everything is not revealed. And you can see where I cut that rock out there, that's not revealed. So if you remember, black conceals, white reveals, that saying, we're only going to see whatever effect I do is only going to be on the water. So let me do this targeted selection tool, and I'm going to take, the darks down just a little bit, and I'm going to take those lights up just a touch. So that gives it just a little bit of contrast. Well, let's say I want to do a hue and saturation layer. So I'm going to do a hue and saturation layer. I'm going to stay up here. And in the hue and saturation layer, I want the exact same mask because I just want what is the water. So if I make a clipping mask out of this, it's only going to be available, or it's only going to show where we have visible pixels in the layer below, which is exactly what I want. So I'm going to right click on this and say create clipping mask. So this is going to create a clipping mask, and whatever I do now is only going to affect whatever is visible on this layer that it's clipped to, which is the water. So now I'm going to push the saturation over a little bit, something like in there, makes it more saturated, but I don't really want it on these leaves here. So I'm going to come down here with the brush, and I'm going to take it off these leaves, which shows you a little bit of flexibility. Let's see. So you can see now that it is giving me saturation only in this area down here, but then I can continue to mask off what I don't want it to have. So it's kind of a good option to be able to clip and then mask what you don't want it to do. So let's say I also want to add one to add contrast. And again, I only want it to affect the water. So I'm going to create a clipping mask right here. Create clipping mask. Now, whenever I add contrast, it's only going to affect the water. It's also going to affect this because it's actually clipped to this layer down here. This mask has nothing to do with what's going on up here. This is actually still clipped to this right here. So if I add contrast, it's going to add some contrast basically just to the water. So now, and I did this before when I was practicing, if you create a group and you turn it on and off, you can see the difference in the water. So that's how you can use a clipping mask with landscapes. I mean, it happens all the time. And if you look, these icons that are included, and okay, this is contrast. This is the clipping mask icon down here. So if you don't right click here, you can come in here and just click there. Just I can turn it off, I can turn it back on. So that's the clipping mask icon, and it's on every one of the adjustment layers. So it's pretty handy right there. And if you use clipping mask in this way, it's real quick and real easy to use. Any questions on this? No questions? Okay. Next. You know, last Thursday, Ken alluded to the fact that he's not going to do a meeting this Thursday, but next Thursday, Thursday of next week, that he wanted to talk about doing double exposures. So I'm going to steal just a little bit of his thunder, because if he doesn't use a clipping mask to do his double exposures, I'm really interested in how he does it. So let me just turn this one on. Actually, that's not the first one. Right here. I have this one that I did. It's pretty simple to do. So let me show you from the start. Okay. So I started with this texture. Well, this texture is too light, so I just created a copy of it and changed it to blend mode to multiply to darken. But it's still too bright, more than I want. So I copied it again and multiply, and then I turned it down to 78% so that it was a little too dark. Okay, so that's how I created the background. Then I had the copy of this girl, and this is an image that I shot several years ago while with Dallas Photography Club back in 2010, I think it is. And you'll notice part of her arm is missing, but when I did this, I did an extraction using select and mask to pull her off of the original, which is this. So this is her original. Actually, I added this color overlay. So this is actually the original. So I wanted to take her off of this background here. So I did a selection, and then I did select and mask. And when I did select and mask, I did it in 3 stages. And I did select and mask for her hair, I did select and mask for this arm, and I did select and mask for this elbow here. And I'll explain that at some point down the road when we get into select and mask why I did 3 of these. But if you look, she turns out okay. And then if you turn the effects on, she becomes pretty dark here, but it blends in pretty nicely once we're done. So then I brought in this background here, and if I show you that background, let's see if I turn her off. Oh, I can't because it's clipped. I'll unclip it so that you can see the background. So this is the backgrounds, and it's I've got a gradient on it here, and I don't really want to move it. So if I can show it to you right here. This is the background, and I think we saw this one when we were doing some dodging and burning. This is Jordan Lake up in Maine. I was there on a workshop with Moose Peterson and his crew, and it's pretty, you can see that it's a pretty nasty morning, but it still turned out to be not too bad as far as shooting the lake. You can see some of my friends over here that are also shooting some stuff. So anyway, I brought this in and ran a gradient on it. You can see the gradient here, but when I clip it to her, if I turn her back on, you'll notice that it's only on her. So in the hair here, and in this hair, and down here on the arm, it's not covering anywhere else. So let me turn the background back on. So then I came in here and just did some touch up from there. This is a lookup table, 3 lookup tables here. And I did a little bit of masking there. Actually, I think I copied this all the way up. And then did some curves adjustments to kind of give it a little bit better look. Finally, I put some text in there just for grins. And the text, you'll notice that I can move this text around. Oops, if I'm on that layer, I can. I can move this text around and it's transparent. So whatever is through it is, you can see. And I made that transparent with using the blend if. So if you look over here, remember the blend if? I said I only want it to show up where there's some darkness. And these letters, if I turn that off, yeah. If I turn that off, you'll see that it's yellow, same as the other. When I wrote that in there, I just left the color of the yellow on. But when I turned it down like that, that yellow went away, and I have a stroke around it, and it just makes it transparent. So pretty easy way if you understand. Remember, we went through blend if quite a while ago, that I can take that and make that color go away pretty easily. So anyway, that is using clipping masks. And I clipped right here, I clipped the landscape onto the girl, and then I went in here and these used all of these lookups and curves to adjust that, and then an overall change. So kind of creative with the using the clipping masks, and I went through that extremely fast, and I'm trying to make up for time that we lost, and sorry about that. Any questions on this? No questions? Let me show you a variation of this right here. And the only difference here basically is that, well, first of all, I put a blue background on it. But then I came in here on this gradient map. You can see that, you know, remember gradient maps? We talked about that not last fall sometime. On the left side, this is your shadows. On the right side, this is your highlights. So from your deep shadows are going to be this color, and then it gradates all the way to your highlights. So if you remember, she had pretty high highlights on the right side here and on her hand, and so they're pretty much pure yellow. And over here in the dark shadows of her hair, it's pure blue. So it kind of gives you another look, something that you know, you could play around with. But gradient maps are a lot of fun too. So any questions? Nope. Phil, I know I didn't talk directly about adding a gradient, but if we go back to this, I could have actually put a gradient in here. And we'll talk about libraries at some point, but I have a bunch of gradients in here in a library. So let's just pick one. We'll pick this one, drag it over here, and resize it. And now I can take that gradient and I can create a clipping mask to the text. And because I did the blend if, that's not showing through, but now I have that text inside the letters. So that's pretty popular too. And I use it all the time with my banners when I'm doing banners and posters for the teams. And I put, you know, the team name or the words or something up there. I might put text, a texture in there, and then I'll do some more things to it to add like a gradient overlay or something like that to make it really pop. So yes, gradients is a good thing to be able to do with your textures. I mean, yeah, your textures is a good thing to be able to use with your clipping mask as well. So, questions on that? Too much? I was hoping that the house analogy was helpful, because basically if you just remember when you do a clipping mask, it's only going to show up where there is something visible below. So in this case, this landscape is only showing up where the girl has visible pixels. And she is on a layer that has no pixels or no visible pixels anywhere except her. Okay, so that's why I can do this, but then I wanted to take it off of her face. So I moved it down here, and then there was a hard line across here. So then I used a gradient to soften that so there was no hard line. And also, you can see kind of her through here, her hair through the picture. It's just, you know, if you want to take that out, you just come over to the gradients and you remove that. You just add some black right there. Just paint some black in on the mask and you won't see that. Okay. Clear as mud. Comments?
Hard.
Well, I, for one, I have a page full of notes so far to research after you finished.
Well,
Yeah.
clipping mask.
I don't know enough to ask questions.
Me neither. I just want to do the first part where I make little windows that are shaded.
Well, those are actually pretty cool. Like I said, we do some announcements with those. We've done Christmas cards, you know, using clipping mask, and you know, and that's another thing. If you have, you know, if you're putting like Merry Christmas across the top, and you can clip a green layer to it to put the green in there to make it green instead of having it whatever color that you may have had it. Of course, you could always just change the color too through the text, but you know, it's endless all the things you can do with clipping mask. So,
Well, and you can reverse the clipping mask also.
I can't understand you, Phil.
Oh, if you make a change and you don't like it, you can take off the clipping mask.
Correct. Yeah, that's the thing. That's the beauty of having layers like this is that if you see something you don't like, you can always just remove it or unclip it and you know, whatever. So, you know, that's the beauty of using layers. And so.
Bob?
Yes.
Where do you find textures?
You know, it's funny because back to Texas school again. I took a class there, and my teacher said, "Why are you spending all this money on textures? You can go out and shoot your own."
Well, yeah, I mean, where how do you turn them on?
How do you turn them on? You mean over here in the libraries? We can pull it in here. I'm not sure what you mean, how you can turn them on.
That's what I meant, but I don't, but it's...
If you have a texture out, a file somewhere, you know, if you have a library out there somewhere, a folder where you have all your textures, you can just open it up as another image and then just drag it in here.
I see. Okay. Yeah, I've always, I keep them in a directory and always just drag them in. That would be far simpler.
Yes. So a few, probably 2 years ago, I think maybe, have the ability to create your own library over here. And you can create, this is something I wanted to go over at some point, but you can create lots of different, I have skies in here. So I can pull in a different sky. These are the ones that I have out in my folders. When I do my elements here, I've got a rock wall, rock and R, I've got a yellow jacket, I've got a different logo, and I've got different things over here that I use whenever I do their posters and banners. So you can build your own library of things. I have light rays in here that I've collected. So, you know, whatever you want to build over here, you can create in there. So textures is one of the ones that I use over here all the time. So pretty simple to do that, and we'll go over that at some point, or you can look it up. It would take me some time to show you how to do that tonight. But if that's something you want to do, maybe we can do that next time or something. Any other questions before we go to selections? No questions? I don't even know what I've got here. Oh, I've got all these pictures. Okay. Oops. Okay. So if there are no questions, I'm going to close all of these files and open up some others. These files are all available too out of my iCloud drive. That the link is in the Photoshop Learning Facebook group. You can go out there and download all these if you want to. So I'm going to close all of these. Okay, now I'm going to open up a bunch of others. Let's see. Where is it? Oh, you know what? I did that with my laptop, but it doesn't show up here. So maybe it didn't sync. Okay, well that's not good. Okay, because it should say selections. And I don't see a group there. So hang on a second. Go to the bathroom if you need to or whatever, and I'll be right back. I just want to find out which files these are. My laptops are right here. So, there's a bunch of them. Okay. Let's see if I can do this. Oh. Something just happened. All right. I think I'm ready. We're still copying now. Yeah, here we go. Some of these look familiar. All right. All right. Are we ready? we're going to talk about selections. Now, I'm going to talk about some of the simple selections and some of the ways that they work. So, and then I'm going to show you how I can use them by looking at some of these images here. Now, these are not necessarily things that I recommend, but they're things that are very useful to know, because many times when you make selections, you have to use at least 2 tools in order to get the selection to be the way you need it. So if you try one way and it gets it like 90%, then you can use a different tool to just keep that selection, use a different tool to make it better. So we're going to learn about the Marquee tool first. And the Marquee tool, the shortcut key is M as in Mary, or as in Marquee. And you just press M. And if you look over in your toolbar, you probably have 4 over here if you click and hold. I may have told you back when we were working on our workspace and learning the workspace to take the other 2 away, because they're useless as far as I can tell. There's one called a row marquee tool and a column marquee tool. All they do is select a single pixel, either in column or in row. So we can actually look at those just so I can show you. And here is the single column marquee. And if I click here, it's going to select just a single column. Now all that is 1 pixel. So I'm not really sure what this is useful for. I'm sure that it's probably some designers or somebody found a use for it, but as far as I'm concerned, we don't have a use for it. There's too many other ways to make selections to work with that. You could, the only thing I could think of is that maybe if you wanted to have it as a dark line, you could take that and fill it with black. But even even then, you just have this really skinny line. So I'm not really sure what that's useful for. So we're going to talk about the rectangular marquee and the elliptical marquee tools, because those are useful and I use them all the time. So if we go back to the marquee tool, you'll notice up here that you have in the options bar. Let's talk about what's up here. Now here is something that we talked about this in the past when we were talking about the tool, some of the other tools. This is your presets basically, and all this does is stores these settings for you. So if you have a certain kind of settings here that you want to not have to remember to do every time, then you can assign those into a preset, and then you can just come down here and click that preset. So if you do multiple different things up here and you want to have one for landscapes, one for portraits, one for whatever, you can do that. You can create a preset for those. But for me, I don't do that. Probably 99% of the time, I don't create any tool presets because I don't have to, or I don't need to, I should say. But these tools right here, basically all this is for creating a new selection. This is for adding to a selection, for subtracting a selection, and then for intersecting selections. I also don't use these tools because you can use your keyboard to help you do that. So if you find these useful, then you can make changes up here and do that. But you know that if you make, like if I make a selection and then I come over here and I want to add to that selection, then it just does that. However, if you come over here and do this and you make a selection, you can press on the shift key and it does the same thing. So I just use my keyboard to do it for me. The feathering basically, let's make this say 200 pixels. 200 pixels or 2300 maybe, 200 pixels. And then if I come in here, it doesn't like it because one more time, 200, there we go. Now I come in here and I do this. Notice how the edges are rounded. Now if I fill this with black, you can see it's feathered around the edges. But I don't use this either because there's other ways to do it better. If you know the exact amount you want to do it every time, then you can just plug it in there, make your selection, and you're good to go. But I leave it at 0. My preference. Anti-aliasing is whenever you make your selection and sometimes it has rugged edges around the edge, and you can click anti-aliasing and it's supposed to smooth that out. You don't have the option here for the rectangular marquee tool, but you do for the elliptical marquee tool, and I would always have that checked to make sure that it's a nice smooth circle. Style, normal means you can just draw anything you want, whatever size you want. If you come in here and say, I want it to be a fixed ratio, then you can make it 1:4, and it's always going to be that 1:4. You don't have any options. You can turn that around and make it 4:1 like this. You can also tell it a fixed size. If you know exactly how big your box needs to be or your rectangle, once you click, it makes it that size. Then there's nothing you can do except move it around. So I don't do those either. That's just me. I leave it on normal, and then I can go on. So select and mask is something we'll talk about later. All of your selection tools, when you create selections, will have the select and mask button. You also have it on your masks. So whenever you create a mask on your layer over here in your layers palette, and you click on your mask, it's in the properties, so you can always get to it there as well. So let's talk about creating rectangular marquee. So if I just pull like this, I can do whatever I want. If I press the shift key, then it makes it a perfect square. Okay, so that's a shortcut key. If I add the option key or the alt key, it goes from the center out. Okay, or I can just do the option key and it makes it from the center out. Now the other thing you can do is, keep going back here, I'll just do deselect. The other thing you can do is you can make your square, and all of this is still with the mouse key or your pen held down. If you press the space bar, you can move it around like this. Let go of the space bar, and then you're continuing to do this. Again, press the option or alt, and you go from the center like that. Or you can press both of them and move it over here and then let up the space bar, and you can keep going with your inside out. If you press the shift key at the same time, it becomes a perfect square. As long as you're still pressing the alt or option key, it becomes a perfect square from inside out. So all of these three keys you can press together and you can use together. So just remember that the shift key makes a perfect square. The option or alt key makes a square from the middle. Whoops, that's not working. One more time. Option. Ah, there we go. I wonder why that didn't work. Oh, yeah, I was thinking a perfect square. So yeah, from the middle out, your option key, okay, and then your space bar. Your space bar, again, all of this time you have not let up your mouse key. Once you let up your mouse key, then all bets are off. Those keys are no longer applicable. So it's important when you're creating a selection, if you have something you want to select and you create your selection and it's just not quite right, you can press the space bar and move it over a little bit to get it where you want it. But if you want a perfect square, again, press the shift key. If you want it to be from inside out, which if you think about it, this works also on the elliptical marquee tool, which we're going to look at in just a minute. But if you're looking at something that is a perfect square and you put your cursor right where in the middle of that and you're making a selection, I'm pressing the wrong key, sorry. And you press, it's going to go from the middle out, and it's going to be really helpful to get that right. Otherwise, you're going to be clicking here and pulling it, and so you're going to have it perfect here in the upper left. And that's particularly important when we talk about the elliptical tool. I'll show you that in just a second. So any questions about that? I know that's a lot, but those three keys, if you can remember those three keys when you're making a selection with the marquee tool, it's pretty awesome to be able to use those. Questions? Okay, one step further, we have our selection made. Notice that when I go inside the selection, I get this little arrow. If I'm outside, it's a plus. If I'm inside, it's an arrow. So when I'm inside here, I can do multiple things. I can right click and I get all of this in here that I can do. Now, deselect, select inverse, feather. Here's another way to feather. Select and mask again. You can save this selection to use later, and other things you can, copies, free transform and transform selection. This is what I want to talk about, because now I'm inside here and it's my selection is just not quite right because it's not a perfect rectangle. So I can right click and I can do transform selection. And now I've got all these anchors that I can play with, but I can also right click again and you've got more to work with. So we need to talk about free transform, because this is the power of free transform right here. And you're gonna see in just a minute when I use warp how I can make it work for me. So if I select warp, I've got these handles now, and I can grab this handle and move this edge out like this and get it right exactly where that selection needs to be. I can grab these handles and move them in, and I can create a selection that looks like this. So that is something that I think is really awesome that we can do. You can also do the free transform selection and right click, and you can do other things like perspective. You can change perspective by pulling the handle out here, and it changes this perspective so that it looks like it's on a different plane. You can also do distort, and you can just kind of pull it however you need to, like that. So these are some things that I'm going to show you in just a minute. And I think we really do need to go over free transform, because that's what's really powering this, and it makes the selection more better. Makes the selection very much in line with what you need. Yes.
Where did you find you got a selection, and where did you find free transform?
If you right click inside, you get this menu, and you have this free transform and transform selection.
Missed that. Got it.
Okay. That's, this is pretty awesome to have this right here. You know what? I didn't really know this existed. I was doing it a different way. And this is pretty awesome to have this selection here, or menu selection there. So let's pretend like, I'm not using these. So a few more key options here. If I want to add to this, I can press the shift key, and notice that I have a plus beside my cursor. That means I'm going to add. If I want to subtract, I push the option key and subtract. It's that simple. So if I wanted to add another add to this selection, say it needs just a little bit more, I can come in here and I can just grab and come down here and add to it to make it bigger. But if I want to get rid of something up here, I can do a option or alt and come up here and get rid of this corner. Now you have that gone. So it's that simple. You don't have to come up here and use these keys. And I never use this merge. So maybe it's because I just do it a different way. Don't think about it in that manner. But that's how you create selections with the Marquee tool. Now, let's look at the elliptical Marquee tool. Oh, and by the way, if you notice that it's the Marquee, the rectangular Marquee tool selected. If I press Shift and M is the shortcut key, but if I press Shift, it goes to the other selections in there. So I can go through those just by pressing the Shift and M. So now we have the elliptical Marquee tool selected, and you notice up here that now we have anti-aliasing turned on. And I suppose that maybe it's only available for ellipsis for some reason, but anyway, I make sure it's turned on. So now you can just grab this and create circles. And then once again, press the Shift key, it becomes a perfect circle. Press the Option key, and it's from inside out. Let go of the Option key, press the Space key, you can move it around, let go of the space bar, now you're back to creating your circle. So pretty awesome. Again, if I wanted to do anything here, can use the free transform selection. I can right click again. Warp. I like to use the warp because typically let's pretend like I'm cutting out a basketball for my poster. The basketball is typically not going to be perfectly round because it's going to be an image that I shot usually, and it's either being thrown or bounced off the floor, or they're twirling it on their finger or something like that. So if I'm cutting it out, it's not going to be perfect. So I come in here and select warp. Then I can take these handles and just kind of move it out a little bit like that if I need to, make it a little bit more oblong or whatever. I can make a football out of this if I wanted to. So something like that. So awesome to do this. So if I have this circle, I want to add more to it, I can press down the shift key. And now I've added two circles together. If I want to subtract part of this, I can press the option or alt key, subtract that. You know, it just goes on. And if I wanted to subtract using the rectangular marquee, I can come in here and do that too. So I can do alt or option and subtract based on that. So it's a selection. It doesn't matter what tool you use. You can use multiple tools in here to change it. So any comments on that? Any questions or anything? Am I going too fast?
Hey, Bob, do you ever use that for making a vignette? So you use the elliptical tool and...
I do.
Okay.
I do. In fact, that's I don't know if you saw the first image came up was tulips. That's what we're going to show. That's what I'm going to show you with that.
Okay, thanks.
In fact, I prefer that because it lets you create the vignette. And if you have certain areas in the image that you don't want the darkness to be, then, or maybe not as dark, you can adjust that on your own. So it's just a little bit more flexible when you do it that way. Okay. Any other questions? Let's see this in action. Whoops, not the picture I wanted. Let's try this one. Not the picture I wanted. They're in different order than they were whenever I was doing this before. Okay, let's say that I want to select this. I can come in here and I can do my elliptical marquee tool, and I can start here and press my option or alt key and create my circle. I can press the shift to make it a perfect circle and bring it out here. Press my space bar as well, move it down a little bit, bring it out a little bit more, a little bit more. There we go, we're getting there. So I'm going to let it go right there. So now I'm going to right click on it and I'm going to go to transform selection. Now one thing I want you to notice, when I right click, transform is not available, because if you use free transform here, it has pixels inside there. So if you have pixels inside there and you choose free transform and you move these, it's going to move those pixels. Let me show you. If I do the regular free transform, which is Alt T, Command T, it's not coming up. And it's not even available. Okay. I guess maybe, oh, that's because I'm on a smart object. That's probably why. So let me just start over. I forgot I need to add a new layer. I'll start over again here. We're going to come in here with the elliptical tool. I'm going to create a perfect circle from the inside out. Here we go. So now if I do a free transform, it is available at this point. So transform selection, I want this entire circle. So I'm going to actually move the whole thing over just a little bit. Okay, maybe right there. I'm going to zoom in here. So can everybody see this? I'm going to zoom in here and I'm going to try to get all of this blue. So I'm going to do a right click and I'm going to do warp. I'm going to take this handle, I'm going to move it out just a little bit. See it coming out some? Right here, I'm going to grab and pull this one out. And over here, I'm going to pull this one out some more. Down here, it looks like we need to go quite a ways here. Pull this corner out. There we go. Pull this corner out. And then up here, pull this corner. So you can see where I'm just kind of adjusting this to get this circle perfect. Okay, so it's actually an oblong circle because we're looking at this a little bit from an angle. You can see the side of it over here. You can't see it over here. So it's looking at it a little bit from an angle. So if I hit enter, now I've got this circle selected pretty well. So now I can come in here and I could do something like hue saturation and change the color of that to green. And there you go. So that's one way to use the selection tool of Marquee, elliptical Marquee. So let's try doing it with a rectangular Marquee. So if I come in here, I can just click and go down here like this. Now this, of course, it's not my photography. I'm sure it's the carpentry here. It's not a perfect square. So we're going to do this same thing again. We're going to do free transform selection, and I'm not on a layer again. So let me turn that off and get on a new layer and try it again. You can see it's actually fairly quick that you can do this. Now right click and do transform selection. This corner right here is a little bit too low. Oops, I grabbed the whole thing. You know why? Because I didn't do right click and do warp. So we're going to bring this up like that. Bring this up just a little bit. And now you've got that selected. If I hit enter, that's a pretty good selection. Actually, it's not quite good down here. I can right click and do it again. Transform selection, warp. And I can bring this down just a little bit right there. And that's better. Okay, so now it's a pretty good selection. Now the next thing though, whenever I do this again, and I'm going to do a shift so I can notice I have a little plus beside my cursor. I'm going to add, it's basically adding to that selection. Okay. So I'm in here like this, and I come in and take a close look, and I'm off a little bit up here at the top. So if I do a right click and say transform selection, it is looking at everything because it sees this as being one selection you just added to it here. So it's not going to work. I don't have the handles that are going to be here. So I can't use the free transform for this. So about the only thing I can do is come in here and do a option or alt and do a little bit of a subtraction to get it where I want it. And that's not too bad. Now I've got a little bit right here, so I can do a little bit of a subtraction right there. That's a little too much. There we go, something like that. So it's gonna be a little jagged there, but you're getting the red, and this looks pretty good. It's a little bit off right here. But anyway, you get the idea, and I can do it, press shift and do it again over here. And I'm not gonna worry about straightening them out. So now I can come in here and do my curves layer, I guess, and my selection tool, and I'm just going to bring it up a little bit. So all of that becomes a little bit lighter. So anyway, you can see the selection over here in the layers palette. So it was that easy to do that, and very quick. You guys that have been in the workshop, and when we did removing distractions, you're familiar with using the Marquee tool. And this is, I'm just trying to expand on that a little bit. So you can see over here, though, what we did and any adjustments that we made. Okay, so let's go again. Now you have this one. We're going to do something different with that and this. So let's go back, and that's it for the Marquee tools. Any questions or thoughts or suggestions? Nothing? I must either be a good teacher or you guys are totally confused. Okay. Now we're going to talk about the lasso tool and the polygonal lasso tool. The lasso tool is basically just a freeform. Again, you have the same things up here. This is for new, this is for add, this is for subtract, and this is for intersection. You have the feathering, anti-aliasing, and selected mask. Again, I don't use these. I don't use the feathering. Anti-alias always turned on. So basically, it's that simple for me in using the lasso tool. But the lasso tool can be very difficult to use, but I use it all the time, and I'll show you how I use it. You have the same thing. You press Shift to get a plus, and you come around here and you add that to that. You press Option or Alt to take that out. Maybe take this out. And if you just start over, if you just go like this and let go, it goes right back to the beginning. So anytime you just go like that, it's always going to go back to the beginning, which is important because the Polygonal Lasso Tool works differently. And I wanted you to understand that. So let's go, and that's basically it. It's just like the Marquee tool. If I hit the plus and I come in here, it's going to add that. If it's minus, just like I just showed you, that. If I am drawing, let's display. If I'm drawing and I go like this, and I say I want to move that, I press the Shift key, and nothing happens. So it doesn't work the same way as the Marquee tool as far as moving. And I mean, I said the Shift key, I meant space bar. So if I'm drawing this and I want to move it over with the space bar, it doesn't work. So just keep that in mind. So let's go look at one of those we just did. Let's look at this one. And we're going to put those tools again. And if you press Command and click on your mask, it gives you your selections again. And if I come in here and look at this, this is the way I use the lasso tool. I come in here and look at this, and I go, okay, I missed it right here. I press Shift, and I can come in here and add to it. And I just, you know, I typically won't use it on a straight edge like this, but this is an example. I come in here, and I'm having a tough time drawing tonight. And I can just come in here and select the parts that I missed. I typically would just draw another box like I did a minute ago. But if this were not a straight edge, maybe we'll see that in just a minute when I do some other stuff. I can come in here and I just add that to it. And I typically don't do well straight left and right and straight up and down. I typically rotate my screen so that I can go more at an angle like this. That's why I seem to draw much better. But that's kind of how I use the lasso tool. I missed it right here, so I minus, and I come in here and try to get rid of that. Come in here and get rid of that. And finally, I have a selection I like. That's how I use the lasso tool. It's for addressing issues where I've missed it. Or where I do we're going to look at some automatic tools here in a minute, and it's where those tools didn't quite get it right. That's where I use the lasso tool. So if we go back, and let's talk, any questions about the lasso tool? It's kind of self-explanatory where it's free form. Okay. Once again, if I do Shift and L is the lasso tool shortcut. I do Shift L, it goes to the Polygonal Lasso Tool. The Polygonal Lasso Tool is free form, but if you click, it creates like a rubber band thing, like this. And you can go out here and you click again, and you go down and click again. And so every time you create an anchor point, then you can move anywhere else. Now when you get back to the beginning, notice that little circle down there, you click, and it closes your loop. So again, you have the same kind of things at the top. Exactly. You have the new, add, subtract, and merge. And then you have the same things here. Same thing as the regular lasso tool. Excuse me. So let me show you where I use that, which is this one. This is a straight line. So what I do is I come in here and I will click here. And I'll come down here and I'll click here, and then over here. It's kind of like, if you think about it, it's kind of like the pen tool, except it's not as forgiving as the pen tool. If you make a mistake, you just have to live with it and go back and correct it later, because there's no on the fly fixing what you've done. But if you do like little strokes like this, then you're going to be pretty close. And I'll do it a little faster here to get us through. Oops, I see I missed it right there. So I'll come back with that in just a minute. And down to, whoops. Wow, it's deselected for some reason. Okay, let's start over. And I missed again right there. But this is how I use it. And I've cut out, I don't know what it's doing. I must be touching, that's weird. Anyway, I use this to cut out basketball backboards because they're very straight and, you know, rigid, kind of like, you know, lots of rectangles and everything, because you got the backboard and you got the poles behind it and that sort of thing. I'm gonna make this work. Okay, let me come back this way. And it's actually easier than it looks here. I'm just not, I would probably zoom in and do it a little bit better. Missed it right there, there. And back over here and then down to the beginning. And then you get this selection. So if I come in here and I see that I really missed it, especially down here, or I missed it like that, I could either use the same tool and just do a Option or Alt, and maybe click right here and then come down here like this, and then down here like this, and then come up over here and back over here is where I was, right there, and then it takes that out. So it's a little easier that way. Or I could use the lasso tool. Right here I may want to use the lasso tool because it's kind of simple to use. But if we use this tool, I would click, oops, see what I did? I clicked without pushing the Shift key. So I just do a Command Z or Alt Z, and I'm back to where I was. Press the Shift key now and click. And then I could come down here like this. So just another tool that you can use. And it's really good on straight edges like this. And then I could, what you can also do is come in here and say, okay, I want to do the opposite. So I've got the drain here selected, but I really wanted to work on the brick. I could do Command Shift I, which is inverse the selection, or I could do select inverse, which you can see as Command Shift I, or Control Shift I. And then your marching ants are around the edges here, and I could come in here with a curves layer and just bring it down a little bit so that you have darker brick. So just another tool in the toolbox. That's the way the Polygonal Lasso tool works. Okay. Questions? Comments? None? We're going to get through early tonight. We're going to go through one more set of selections, and then probably next time we'll go through some others. There's color range and there's other things that we're going to talk about, but not tonight. We'll do that next time. So we have another set here. Since there's no questions on that, we'll go on to the next ones. And this is your quick selection tool. And they have a new one out there, which is absolutely awesome. And it's probably going to always be your go-to tool, or one of your go-to tools for making selections. And I'll show you how it works. But this, I used to do, my go-to tool used to be quick selection tool. And I'll show you how that works, and then I'll show you the object selection tool, which is awesome. So we're going to do the quick selection tool first. And I have to have something, so I can't do it on a blank palette because it tries to determine how to select. So we're going to pick something like this. So it's basically, again, you have your new selection, add selection, subtract selection. So I think it defaults on that one, so I'm going to move it over there. You have a brush So in this case, you have a regular brush that you're using, and you can make that a soft edge or hard edge. In certain instances, you want to make it pretty hard because you want to make that a very distinct selection. In other cases, you may want it very soft so that it can make kind of a feathered selection. The spacing, the size, I don't really touch those. This little graph right here is basically for creating your own look of your brush. If I take the roundness from 100%, I can make it more of an ellipsis like that. And then I can turn it so that it becomes something like this. And you can hardly see it. Let me make it bigger. So it's a, I've gotten so used to the round tool that I'm not using this. So in fact, I don't even use the quick selection tool that much anymore. It's good in certain instances. So basically I do 0 and I do 100%. So I just use a regular round brush. So the way this works, oh, and sample all layers, enhance edge. Sample all layers is if I were on a curves layer and I was making a selection here for the curves layer. I wanted to select all layers here to make sure that I'm getting, just looking at everything to make my selection. Enhance edge always, I don't know why you wouldn't want that turned on. It helps to make your edge more distinct. So we're going to do sample all layers, and I'm going to come in here, and basically what you do is you click and drag, and you need to be fairly subtle, and you need to make sure your brush is not bigger than the area that you're trying to select. So if I'm up here, my brush is too big because it's going to think I'm wanting to select this up here too. So what I'm going to do first, I'm just going to click right here, and I just clicked and it selected that. So not too bad. So now, now it's on it jumped over to the plus automatically. Wow. Okay. So now I'm going to click right here. It didn't do too bad, but it didn't get that. So I'm going to hit Shift, and I'm just going to make my circle around that a little bit and try to select it a little bit more. And it's trying to learn as you're doing this. So now I'm going to click over here, and then here, down here, over here. You can see it's not doing too bad. Okay, not too bad. If I make my brush, excuse me, a little smaller, excuse me, press Shift, click here, here. Not too bad, but this chain is going to be difficult. If I zoom in and then make my brush very small and click here, I can do little bits at a time, and it's going to take a while to come in here. And you can, like I said, you can click and drag, and it's going to get, oops, now see it took all of this, and you don't want that. So now I'm going to press the Option or Alt key and just click in there and see if it'll get rid of it. No, so now I'm going to need to drag. There we go. So you just have to kind of play with this. And in the past, I would get my lasso tool and come out here and draw around these edges to get this chain. And you could also use the pen tool, which I'm not a pen tool person, but the pen tool maybe would do a better job here and easier than the lasso tool, because the lasso tool being so free form, you have to be pretty good at tracing around this. So that's kind of how the quick selection tool works. And if you're looking to get a big area, maybe you've got a portrait and you've got a solid red background or something, you can just click there with the quick selection tool and kind of drag a little bit, and it will select the entire red. It may not get it all correctly, and you may have to go in with the lasso tool or something like that to fix it. But that's kind of how the quick selection tool works. Any questions on that? Pretty simple.
So, okay, the other day I was trying to do for our post-processing challenge, and I'd picked this photo, and it had lots of leaves against the sky. And I was doing okay, but then it was like right around the leaves, I had darkened the sky, but then it was white.
Right.
And I've finally figured out, I think, on the quick selection tool, because I figured out, okay, I can move the, the points, but it seems like it will only move. In other words, you can bring it inside the selection, but you can't move it outside the selection. Is that right, or I'm not clicking on something correctly?
I'm not sure I know what you mean, but
Okay, so let's say I had this picture, and the top part of it was sky, and there were some leaves and mountains on the bottom part, on the left and the bottom part.
Okay.
And so it automatically selected the top of the photo for the outside where the sky was.
Okay.
And if I wanted to move it down outside of that original selection, it would not work, but I can move it up within that selection. And then I tried doing it the opposite way, come down to the bottom and select the mountains, and it was the same thing. So I don't know if there was a command I could have used, or it's like, okay, I kind of see what it's doing. Now I finally gave up and just picked another photo that didn't have all those leaves in it. But I was trying to figure out how the selection worked, as far as
Right.
altering your, what it originally came up with, because it's like, okay, it missed this. And
Well,
I mean, does that make sense to you? Do you understand what I'm saying?
I think so. If you, let's see.
And it may have been, maybe if I'd used the plus and the minus thing, that might have been what I was missing.
Well, I think that, if you, back to the transform selection, if I just grab this, I can move that selection wherever I want it. See?
Yeah, and see, it would do that. Sometimes it would move the whole, and I'm like, no, I just wanted to get this one little piece. So it had like, there were some mountains, and then there was a little bit of a mountain that was almost kind of blended in with the sky.
Right.
And it did not pick that up.
Okay.
But I wanted that in part of my selection, and I could not figure out how to get that light mountain, which was the furthest away, in the selection. So.
Okay. Well, if you remember, like on this one right here, if I just take and press the plus here and use the lasso tool, I can use the lasso tool, and it's a polygon one, so, and I can press still, it's not changing for me. So sometimes my shortcut keys don't work, so it's kind of weird. Okay. So if I come in here and press shift, see, I can come back around here free form and add that in like that.
Okay.
So
that may be what I needed to do. Was I was just I was clicking on it, and I noticed, oh, okay, it moved the selection a little bit. But like I say, it seemed to only move it within the whole selection, not outside of the whole selection. So I could only move it one direction.
Okay. Yeah, I'd like to see that though, because it could be.
I'll try and maybe I'll maybe send you the photo and show you kind of what I was trying to do, and you can tell me.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, but I'll try it again. I may play around with it a little more since you've done this, and see if I can figure it out. But like I say, I just gave up and picked another photo that was easier.
Okay, sometimes that's what. Sometimes if you can do that, sometimes that's the best thing.
Yeah, it's like, okay, we'll just go another route right here.
Okay, so you can see how much trouble that was. It was only like, any other questions first? Comments or anything? Okay. It took me what, maybe 3 minutes to do that. And plus, if I was going to do the chain, it would take probably another 5 minutes or something to do the chain and get it just right. So instead of doing that, Photoshop came out with a really neat little tool. I'm going to deselect this. And this tool is called Object Selection Tool. This is one of those AI things. And up here, you notice that you have the same things, add or new, add, subtract, intersect. You have a mode here. First of all, this enhance the edge. And it's set for object subtract, and I'll explain that in just a second. You have either lasso or rectangle, and I actually like the rectangle better, and you'll see what I mean. What you do is you select an object in here using this. Now, I missed a little bit at the bottom, so I'm going to press the space bar and just kind of move it over a little bit. Once I let up with my mouse key, it's going to try to select what it thinks is the subject, and look at that. It did a fantastic job. If you zoom in here, it actually did the chain really well. It didn't quite get this stuff in the middle, and if that's important to you, that's all you have to really fix. A little bit right there that it missed. But what it, you know, I mean, look at what it did. It got almost everything with one click.
Can you go through that process again? Because that's pretty cool.
That is very cool. This is actually what I do now to select things. This and select subject is almost identical. So
That's why I upgraded to the new one.
Yeah,
It is amazing.
it's new in this object selection tool is new in the latest release. Actually, 2020. It's new in that. So,
I thought mine was updated and I don't have that tool.
well, maybe it's just not in your toolbar. I think you actually have to put it there.
Oh,
So you may want to go, you know, down here the little dots and go to Edit Toolbar and see if it's in there.
oh, okay.
It's pretty awesome though. What you do is you select this, and it's the shortcut key is W. I don't know how it got to be W. Maybe it's because the magic wand used to be in there years ago. Uh-oh, some kind of selection there. Kind of weird. Look at that. I'm making a selection. My mouse here is going kind of bonkers. There we go. I don't know what I was doing. Oh, I know. I was probably down here. Yeah, I was doing the magic wand, or the magnetic lasso tool, which I didn't want to do. So anyway, it's right here. W is the, see, it says object selection tool, and it's got W beside it. W is the shortcut key. If I click Shift and W, it goes to the quick selection tool. Oh, I've got that up now. And then it goes there. So the object, it's called object selection tool. When you select it, you have the option up here. And basically, if you like the rectangle, you just put it there and leave it alone. Enhance edge and object subtract. What object subtract means is whenever I make the selection, that means it is being selected, not the inverse. So let's just make sure I'm not a liar here. And if I select this like that, it should mean that it is not being subtracted. So maybe I don't really understand what that is. I thought it meant that it would be like Command Shift I to inverse and select all of this. So I'll have to check on what that means and get back to you. But basically, pretty awesome. All you do is drag the box around it, the rectangle around the object that you're looking for, and let go. And it does your selection for you. Now the other tool in here is select subject. And select subject is on here with this option bar for that, but you can also get to it up here at select subject right here. And it does the same thing, except it looks in your entire photo and tries to determine what your subject is, and then it makes the selection. So again, awesome. Did an awesome job there. So let's look at some other images. See what it does here if I say select subject. And it selected almost all of that. For some reason, it didn't get this down here. So what you would want to do, and I think I did this the other day, if I have select object selected over here as my tool, then I could probably press my Shift key to add and do this and see if it adds to it. Well, it kind of did. Didn't do a great job there, so I tried to select that. So, but you know, 90% of it, you just have to come in here and finish it. So let's see. What about this? we're going to do select subject. Look at that. Selected the clock.
It might work better on,
What's that?
might work better on that gutter if you hadn't already run that curves.
Oh, yeah, if I hadn't darkened it.
Where it darkened it down that corner.
Yeah. Now, there was one thing I wanted to show you on this, and that is, what if I wanted to, this clock face is a little pale, it's a little hazy. And what I want to do here, I'm glad I came across this one because I want to show you this with the elliptical marquee tool. If I'm going to first make a copy of this, and then I'm going to, actually, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to do smart object via copy. Remember what that does? It copies the smart object down here, but it doesn't connect it to the XMP file. So it's got all the adjustments that are in the original smart object, but it's not linked to it with the XMP file. It has its own instructions here. So now I have my own smart object. I'm going to come in here with the Marquee tool. We're going to go back to that for just a second. And I want to show you, let's see, shift, you know. I want to show you how you can select this because it's not a perfect circle, right? So we're going to come in here. I'm going to press the Option key, and I'm going to go from inside out, and I'm going to create kind of a little circle here like this, okay? And then I'm going to come in here and do right-click and say Transform Selection, okay? And I'm going to take this, and first I'm going to turn it to kind of get it the way I want it. And it's a little bit big. It's a little off here and a little much down here. So I can just kind of push that in and pull this out a little bit. And it's still off. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click and I'm going to say warp. Okay. So I love this warp tool because it allows you to very softly or very meticulously make it perfect. We'll bring this down a little bit. Bring this down a little bit, bring this back out just a touch. So it only takes a few minutes once you get the hang of it. Come in here and make this a perfect circle. Okay, bring it back in. Okay, so that's almost perfect right there. Off just a little bit right there. So now I'm going to hit enter, and now I can come in here and I can go to filter, camera raw filter. And I can push the dehaze over. And look at what it does to that face. Don't worry about the rest of it. See what it does to the face. It really makes it look better. And even after that, I can come over here. And this is just like Lightroom, so this should look fairly familiar. We're going to reset all of this. And I'm going to push, first I'm going to paint just the, just that. Come down here and turn my mask on so you can see what I'm masking. And I'm doing this with my mouse, so I'm doing a crappy job, but you get the picture. Okay, so now I can turn that off, and I can push dehaze again to give it a little bit of a double whammy, and it kind of messes it up right there. So I can take care of that with a mask. So now I just say okay, and look at how much better that face looks. And I can come in here with a mask on here, and then I can go in here at maybe 20%, 10 or 20%, and just kind of paint it off. Oops, I got a really hard brush and I was at 100%. So soft, about 20% soft. And you can just kind of lighten this up so that that's not so hard. Okay, notice the difference. That's just from being able to select that on its own. So pretty cool. So let's go back to select subject.
Hey, Bob,
Yes.
over in Camera Raw, where'd you find that adjustment thingy?
Let me go back over there. It's this brush right here. That's the adjustment brush. And then you click on it, and I just push the dehaze.
Where?
over.
How did you get there?
How did I get to here?
Yeah.
So I went into Camera Raw,
Yeah.
okay, and I came in and I'm here.
Uh-huh.
I do the dehaze.
Yeah.
I come up here to the top and I click on this adjustment brush.
Ah, okay. Got it. Thank you.
Sure. Okay. So anyway, that's just another tip there. Okay, let's see. I wanted to show you this. Okay, now we're going to select subject with this. Go back to here, select subject. And it does not do a good job. So if you notice, it kind of did the edges here. It didn't do a very good job on these lights, but it didn't select any of these legs here on the tower, especially with the whatever that is, the water that comes out of it, or any of this stuff. So it didn't really do a good job here. So it doesn't always work, but it certainly works most of the time. This is the only one of the images that I was working on where it did not do a good job. Everything else was awesome. We have this girl, select subject, boom, got it. All of her around here. The only thing I would have to do is a little bit in between her fingers and then work on her hair. Everything else is done for me. So I was watching a video the other day by Dave Cross, and he was saying that the stuff that is included now with this select subject and select object is so good that he doesn't even use the pen tool anymore. And he said, you know, the pen tool has always been the panacea of selections. Everybody said, you know, swore by the pen tool. I've never used it because it really, I guess I've always been okay with the selections that I made. But he said basically he doesn't even use it anymore because this stuff is so good that he uses this. So, and I agree with him. This is so good that you can start here. And this used to be a big part of bringing in the quick selection tool. And I'd come in here and I'd select all of this, and I'd come over here with the hands and come down here. You know, it'd take me 5 minutes just to do all of that. And then I would take it and select the mask and work on the hair. But nowadays it's one click, you're done, go to select the mask. It takes about maybe 5 minutes over there and you're done. So really, really good stuff. Let's see. We're getting close to the end here. There was one more here I want to talk about. This. Okay. So if we use this, for example, and I say select subject, it gets those tulips really good. And those are the subject. So I could do my thing, sharpen, whatever I want to do those tulips, and I'm good. But what I wanted to show you is what I think it was Susan a minute ago alluded to, creating a vignette. This already has a vignette on it, but I'll create another one just for grins. So the way I do a vignette is I come in here with the elliptical marquee tool, and I just kind of make my circle. Whoops, it says elliptical. That's because I'm on the wrong tool. Okay. And I can just kind of make my circle kind of like this. I'm using my mouse instead of my tablet here. And I will spacebar, move it over a little bit, and I'm pretty well done there. So I right click and free transform or transform selection, and then I turn it around here like this because I want it to be these two tulips. Make it a little bit bigger, maybe it down this way a little bit. So, you know, here I am, and I've got this selection now. So I come in here and I'm going to create a curves layer. You can be a levels layer, it doesn't matter. And see, I wonder if I press command when I click it. Yeah. So I press command because I wanted it to be inverted. I want to make sure that actually it's not inverted. This is the way I don't want it. So I need to invert that because I want, actually, no, that's right. I want that dark. Sorry, like that. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to bring this down because I want to darken all of this, right? Oops, didn't mean to click. I want to darken all this area here. So I bring this down like this, and it darkens all that area. Now this is hard here, and this is where I was saying that it's easier to do the feathering in here because I can go to this right here, This is the properties for the mask, and here's the feather slider. I can take this slider and I can move it and feather it as much as I want to, like this. So I now have a nice feathered vignette. It's like this. If it's too dark, that's okay. I can bring the opacity down. I can also bring the density down here too if I want to bring some of that back. That's actually the mask that I would be hiding, so that's not good. I actually want to do the opacity. So if it's too dark, I can bring it up like that. And sometimes I will come in here and do a second one. This one I wouldn't, but I could come in here and do a Command J, and I could take this and invert it, and then I could click on this. I could throw this away, and I could come in here and lighten up. So I can lighten the center just a little bit, add a little bit of light there, a little bit of dark in the background. So this vignette winds up being really nice and soft, exactly where you want it. If I don't like it there, you know, I can click these and get my move tool. I can move it around, see where it is there. Or I can always come back in here and change the mask on that. Okay, that's how I do my vignetting. And I don't do a lot of vignetting as much as I used to, but I think it works kind of nice on this image. So, any comments on that? No? Is that the way you do vignetting? I guess that's a no. Okay.
I vignette like you do, but I hadn't seen that masking before.
Okay. It just gives it you know, you can feather it that way as much as you want. I could feather it even more. I could feather it less. You really don't want to see those edges though. And, you know, it gives you a lot of flexibility moving it around.
Yeah, I've only done vignetting where you do the whole photo in Lightroom, so this is really cool.
Yeah. Yeah, in Lightroom you don't have, or in Camera, either one, both of them have the vignetting, and you don't have the ability to put it the way you want it.
Specify exactly what you want a vignette, not
Exactly.
the whole photo. That's
Exactly.
pretty nice.
And if I had something like right here that I wanted to, you know, not be vignetted, all I got to do is make sure that I, you know, add it to the mask so that it's not masked and it lights, you know, it's not as dark. And I used to get that sometimes on portraits where the moms would come back and say, well, his hands are kind of dark. It's because I did a vignette and I shouldn't have darkened the hands, you know. So it allows you, if this were a portrait, it allows you to really put it in here, but then you can kind of shade it off of the hands or you know, the chest or whatever of the person. So it helps that way too. Pretty cool. Okay. Any other things? Any other questions or anything? I'm going to give you another little bonus. Like I did last time, it's nothing to do with selections. If you don't have any questions on selections, okay. This was in Waxahachie, I believe. And what I want to show you is how to change the color of this curve down here using curves. And it's real simple to do. You don't have to use curves. You could also use a solid color adjustment layer. You can also use hue and saturation, although hue and saturation, you can't make it exactly the color that you want. You have to just kind of use a slider. So it's pretty simple. If I come in here, I got to make sure I remember it right. I learned this the other day from Ben Wilmore. If you know who that is, he's a really, really good Photoshop guy. Lightroom too, he knows his stuff in both of those. But we're going to create a curves layer. And what we want to do, let's see, do I still have, I don't know if I saved that selection or not. No, I didn't. Okay, I'm going to have to make a selection here first. So I'm just going to use my Marquee tool. It's not working. My shortcut keys are not, oh, is it big? Oh, because I have a dialog box open. That's why. Doesn't work if you have a dialog box open or you're in the middle of something. So I'm just going to make a quick selection of this curve here. And also some of the tools in the past, you know, I told you you couldn't really color something that's white or black. It's really difficult unless you actually create a selection. So this is the way we're going to do this. But what we're going to do is I'm going to take the targeted selection tool, and I'm going to take that, and I'm going to press Command and Option, and I'm going to click, or I think it's Command and Shift. We'll see. I can't remember. I'll try it, and if it doesn't work, I'll try the other. I'm going to click here, and when I do that, there's not anything that, there's no point on the curve, but if you look at your colors, there is a point on your channels. Each one of these has a point. Now, if you remember, put it back on red, if you remember, the input means where we started from, and the output means where we went to, okay? And you know what? I selected the wrong thing. So I believe, yeah, I did. So we're going to come down here and throw that away, and I'm going to do it again. Curves, and I'm going to quick selection. I need to select what I'm going to change. So that's where I need to be. Command Shift, click here. And now if we come in here, there should be some points on here. Yeah, there's a point. Okay. So what I need to do now is I need to figure out what are the RGB values for this green, because I want to change this to that green. So there's a couple of ways to do that. The easiest way really is to come in here and go to open up your info panel right here. And if you notice, look over here, as I move around, those numbers are changing. RGB values are changing. So if you look, make sure you're looking over there, because what I want to do is get the RGB value for this green here. So it's 66, 100, and 86. So I'm going to change the red, green, and blue values in those channels to match that. So 66, 100, and 86. So red is going to be 66. So I just changed the output to 66. What did I say? 66, 100, and something. 100, and I think I said 86. 86. And maybe it wasn't 86. Let's see, what is it? So
I can't believe that.
84. Yeah, that's about right. So if it's so notice how this changed to kind of that color. If it's not dark enough or it's too dark, all you got to do is go back to RGB, and you can take the regular curve here, you can bring it down so it becomes a little bit more of that color. So I don't know if that's too advanced for you. Sorry, but if you can come back and watch this again, it's really pretty simple.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I won't remember it, but it's cool.
I know. I'll
Now,
try to remember it because it's what I would like to do sometimes.
So the other way to do it though, and I'll turn this off, and we'll just add a. I meant to have that selection there though. We'll just go back here, start over. I have the selection tool. The other way to do it is with a solid color adjustment layer. So you can go solid color, and it just jumps into black. So don't worry about that. But again, if you just say okay, if you use your info palette. So window, and go to your info palette, and you hold it over there. You're going to say 57, 95, and 82. So click here and go to 57, 95, 82. And you got that color. Now notice it's kind of pasty on there. So what you need to do is change your blend mode to color. Oh, and it comes up as that color. So that's the problem with, see if I change it from color, maybe I can get it with hue. No. See, it's trying to blend with the white down below, so this doesn't really quite work either. What I would have to do now is come in here and darken it. So, oops, clipping mask. And make it dark, and that's not working. So anyway, I guess this solid color doesn't quite work either. So I would have to darken it down. But I thought the doing it with curves was kind of cool. So any questions? Anything we've done tonight? am I doing stuff that is too deep for you, too hard?
I think what it is, you're at least putting stuff out there that we can go investigate on our own if it's something that interests us, that we did, oh, I didn't know you could do that, you know, kind of thing.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it's really hard to, especially when you're as dumb as me about Photoshop. But it's kind of like any little tidbit that it sinks into my brain at some point, then I'll remember and, you know, go out and play with it. And, you know,
Well, I
at
just,
least it puts the idea in your head that, oh, you can do this.
yeah, it's not hard. I mean, if you just follow this, take my images, turn on the video, and sit down and just try to redo it, and you'll see how easy it really is. I mean, it looks hard because, I mean, you can see that I even forgot how to do some of this stuff, and I was fumbling around part of the time, but it's not really that hard after you've done it a few times. And that select object tool and select subject tool are awesome. We'll talk about color range next time. Color range is something that's it might be a little difficult as well, but it does a pretty awesome job of doing selections. But I don't know that it would do any better than your select object does. So some people, there are lots of big name photographers out there that swear by color range. It's the greatest tool in Photoshop, but that was well before we got these new AI tools for selecting subject and select object. So anyway, let me know what you want to talk about. I think next time we'll, you know, if I don't hear anything else, next time we'll continue into selections. But if you have something you want me to talk about, just let me know. And even if you don't know what tool it is, you know, how do I do so-and-so, just tell me, and I'll try to help you with that. So otherwise, I'll pick the subjects and hope that you like it.
All right. Thank you.
Thank
All
you.
right. Thanks, everybody. Sorry we ran over just a little
Right.
bit.
That's all right.
Thanks, Bob.
None of us are going anywhere.
Yeah.
The
Right.
governor says we're all free Friday.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, let's just go throw caution to the wind.
It's
Yeah,
all
really.
over. They just pulled it and it's all gone.